It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today's guest is Dave Hataj, the second generation president and owner of Edgerton Gear. Edgerton is a Wisconsin-based custom gear manufacturer where Dave has worked for over 30 years. As a journeyman machinist by age 21, he then earned a bachelor's degree from the University of California at Irvine and then completed his master's thesis of systems theory and family business from Regent College in Vancouver, British Columbia. In 2014, he earned a doctorate of transformational leadership from Bakke Graduate University, developing a curriculum called Craftsmen with Character. The course introduces high school students to the trades and manufacturing as an excellent career path while developing character and soft skills. He's the author of Good Work, How Blue-Collar Business Can Change Lives, Communities, and the World. Dave Hataj, welcome into the corner office.
Hey, Brant, great to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful to have you here. We spoke a couple of weeks ago, and gosh, this pandemic has just seemed to be ongoing. I don't even remember how many months we are in it now, but how are you doing? How's your family? How is all your colleagues at work through this interesting time?
Yeah, we're all good. Here in Wisconsin, we've had a few spikes of COVID, but in the last month or so, we've been pretty clean.
That's great.
Business has been pretty strong. Quick story, when the COVID broke out, and everybody was hoarding toilet paper and all of that.
I remember that well.
Yeah, our business actually took off because one of our main customers makes machines that make toilet paper.
Oh, there you go.
And they couldn't get parts from Italy, which is where they're founded. So they called us up and said, hey, could you make some parts for us? And then 2 toilet paper companies caught on fire. And so that contributed to the shortages as well.
Wow.
But we've been really blessed. We've ridden the year really well, and
that's great. Right overall, is the business up or down or about even versus year ago? 2020 versus 19.
It was down maybe 2% year on year, but the start of 2021 is just going nuts. We're all on overtime, and things are really, really busy.
Good to hear. Well, let's hope you'll lead the way out of us, Dave.
Hope so.
Well, listen, let's talk about you. And, we always like to kind of start the podcast with the early years. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Born and raised here in Edgerton, Wisconsin. I'm the youngest of four kids. I'm the only son.
Okay.
And my folks started the business in 1962. So we were actually fairly poor. Anybody that's tried to start a business, the early years can often be pretty rough.
Hand to mouth. Yeah.
Yeah. And we actually were renting an old farmhouse where I think it was $80 a month, or we got a deal from the landlord. And so we had gardens, and we canned, and we hunted and fished. And my dad would get us down to the shop, wrapping parts, cleaning parts. I remember as early as 4 and 5 years old. And my mom actually says that she had me in a bassinet next to the desk.
I believe it. So Dad was the entrepreneur. Had he worked elsewhere before starting Edgerton Gear?
Yeah, even though they're from northern Wisconsin, they both, or he worked in Chicago during the summers just to make a living, and he got introduced to gear manufacturing, and then he put himself into a tech school at night. He got married, started having kids, and he just couldn't stand the big city, so he tried to find a place that could kind of get him more up in Wisconsin. He landed here in Edgerton. He had an uncle that lived here.
Yeah. So some lean years in the beginning. Was that pretty much all the way through middle school and high school for you, or did things begin to, perk up a little bit as you got older?
Yeah, I remember my dad didn't have a vacation for the first 7 years.
I can imagine.
And my mom would tell stories that she would literally pray that a farmer would come in with a broken part for one of the pieces of his equipment, so my dad could fix it, so the farmer would pay cash so she could go home and buy groceries on the way home for dinner.
Wow.
So it
Wow.
was pretty lean. So growing up, I don't ever recall that we had money, but I don't recall that I was ever hungry either.
Yeah.
You just live with what you got, and it was a pretty good childhood.
Well, with mom praying, I think you grew up in a Christian household. Is that a correct assumption?
Nah, that's a little bit more complicated.
Okay, tell us about that.
My dad actually expressed faith early on in the marriage, but for some reason he walked away from it. And so by the time I became a teenager, he was a pretty angry atheist. And his dad actually died in Chicago on the streets as a homeless alcoholic. So, and my other grandparents actually owned a bar in northern Wisconsin, and so both sets of the family have had issues with alcohol for generations. So me growing up, I think the first time I was drunk was actually age 8.
Oh my gosh.
And by 15, I was actually drinking pretty heavily, binge drinking on the weekends.
Yeah.
And by the time I graduated high school, I definitely had a problem.
And did you seek help early on, or did that come in your later years?
No, because where I grew up, everybody drank. So it was kind of.
How do you get through a winter in Wisconsin, right?
Well, nobody thought we had a problem, And I remember talking to my dad. He said, when my dad talked about when he was growing up in his household, and granted, I think he was third generation from Bohemia. He'd tell the story that they'd pour in their sippy cups beer instead of water or milk. So at a very early age,
you were introduced. You started building the tolerance, right?
I think so, yeah. But basically by the time I was 19, I didn't go to college. I was still here in the shop, and I had become pretty depressed and drinking and lonely, and it was at that point God got a hold of me, and my life kind of radically changed, and I realized, maybe what mom was trying to teach us all those years, there was something to it.
Yeah.
And so for me to take faith seriously was actually pretty divisive in our family, because my mom was, really serious and on fire about her faith, and my dad wanted nothing to do with it. So I was always kind of caught in the middle. Which way do I go? Do I go out on Sundays hunting and fishing with my dad, or do I go to church with mom?
Yeah.
And
so when did that start? When did you kind of have your literal come to Jesus moment?
At age 19.
19.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And life turned around pretty dramatically. And my dad would actually say that he wouldn't tell me this, but he told my mom that she told me later that he thought I was absolutely worthless, and I wasn't going to amount to anything, because I didn't take my work seriously. I didn't enjoy working in the shop, but I just did it because I had nothing else to do. But then when I had that come to Jesus moment, all of a sudden life had purpose and meaning. I felt like I was here for a reason.
That's
and
awesome.
I started really applying myself at work and really being serious. And my dad later told my mom, after about 6 months, he said, this kid could double the size of this place if he wanted to. Now that he's got ambition.
How about that? Well, good recognition on his part. So you stepped away from the business for a while, right? You went off, got your degrees. Did that happen soon thereafter, or when did you kind of make the decision to, go on and get your degrees, both undergraduate as well as master's?
Well, not only master's, eventually even the doctorate, which is really funny, because if you knew me, I'm not an academic guy. I'm really not. I'm totally hands-on. In education in our family, I think my oldest sister was the only one that ever went to college, and she went to be a social worker. And my dad thought that was kind of useless. So when I left home at 21 or 22, right after I got my journeyman card, went out to California. People thought I should be a pastor because I was taking my faith so seriously. And then people said, well, you got to go to college. And I really, that's what everybody still says, that you got to go to college, right?
Right, sure.
So I ended up going to the University of California, Irvine, having no clue what to study.
So had you moved to Southern California specifically for education, or did you just kind of go out there and see what the world had
No,
for you?
I actually was trying to be a startup triathlete.
Oh, gosh.
That was back in the 80s when the Ironman was getting all this attention. So I thought, hey, I can do that. So I was like a lot of young guys who said, yeah, maybe I can make a living at that, which was really quite foolish because I wasn't that good.
But it brought you to where you needed to be.
It did. It really did. And I ended up getting a job oh my gosh, I had lots of jobs out there. I drove bus. I worked in a retail store. I worked on a college campus. I ended up working I got paid as a pastor for about a year and a half. And through all that, I learned, I still don't know what to do with my life. And in the midst of that, I got married, and people still said you should be a pastor. So we ended up going up to Regent College in Vancouver, British Columbia, still not knowing what to do. And I actually had kind of a bad burnout experience in a church.
Now, is Regent College a seminary, or are they?
They call it a theological graduate school.
Theological grad school, yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
But I still didn't know what to do. And so my wife and I were up there, and one of my mentors said, you need to take a year just to go study and figure out what you really believe and why. And while we were there, I took one of those classes that explores your gifts, talents, experiences, and all that. And at the end of the class, now keep in mind, Edgerton Gear, working in the shop, was the last place on the planet that I'd say I'd ever come back to.
Right. When you left, you thought you made a clean break.
Forever.
Yeah, forever.
Forever and ever and ever. So at the end of that class, I got a report back that was a test, kind of analysis, and it said, quote, "You are uniquely qualified to run a small family-run manufacturing business."
Go figure.
Yeah.
And talk about pointing you back to Wisconsin. Huh?
And at first I said, no way, absolutely no way.
And, this can't be true.
And my wife.
So it was kind of an assessment. It was a career assessment type of a test.
It was. It was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
And the frustration that I had with graduate school is everything was so theoretical and academic. Yeah. And my view of education, it's got to be practical. It's got to serve.
You're a hands-on guy.
Totally a hands-on guy. Yeah, so the school allowed me to come back to the business and do my master's project by trying to bring basically Christian principles into the business, because the business was, even though it was doing okay, it was a mess. I mean, it was a very big mess. My dad had a quarter barrel of beer in the lunchroom fridge. There was pornography everywhere. There was fighting factions.
So you came back. How old were you when you returned?
We were. I think I was 20. See, I got married when I was 26, so I was 28.
Okay, so it had been almost 10 years.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. 7 years. 7 years. 7 years.
Yeah.
But there's warring factions in the shop. I mean, the work ethic was really questionable, and it's like,
But Dad was still in charge. Dad was still running it.
Yeah, but he was burned out. He was having health problems. Yeah. He just wanted to retire, and he even tried to sell the company to employees at one time. That didn't work out. So when I told my dad, I said, Dad, I've got this idea. I'd like to come back and be in the business. I really felt God called us back here. I mean, bottom line, I really did. And the master's the focus was, what if you bring, Christian old-fashioned values into a business? What effect would that have on the business and the family? Because we're a family business. So trying to bring values of integrity, trust, humility, open communication, transparency, all of that, grace. What would happen in both sectors, the business and the family? So
what did Dad say?
He said, you know what? And I said, Dad, we have very different managing styles. He's the old school
command and control.
Yep.
Right.
And I said, we're probably going to have some screaming matches in the shop. He said, that's okay. You can do whatever you want. I just throw them back. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if he really knew what he meant or what I meant.
He just wanted to move on. It sounded like
he did,
and get you back involved.
Yeah.
Were your sisters involved at all? Did any of your three sisters
my
join the business?
One sister was involved in the business at that time, and she really needed to move on and be out. It was not a good environment for her either. So the first 2 years were, I don't know how else to put it. It was hell. It was just anybody who's ever tried to change a culture or tried in a business or a family, it is just excruciating. It was the employees, everybody. I think every employee except one. We only had 17 employees at the time. every one of them except one yelled or told me off at one time, accusing me of different things.
Oh my goodness. And the company had been, what, 20, 25 years old by then, right?
Right.
It'd been around a while.
Right.
Yeah. Goodness.
So it was just a really hard time. And after 2 years, I often joke that the first 2 years were hell and then it got worse.
Oh, Dave.
So,
wow.
And it was just hard. It burned me out so bad, and getting people to trust. And I was so young, I was still trying to figure out, well, why don't people trust me? Why is there all this antagonism? And everybody, what they want, they had their own idea of how they thought it should be run.
Well, you had two things going against you. One of them was, of course, you were the owner's son.
Yes, exactly.
Which, people would say, oh, no, that would be a good thing. No, it wouldn't be.
No.
And then the second, of course, is these ideas were sure a far field from how they'd been managed in the past, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the business was just really got busy, and it grew very, very quickly. And I'm working 12, 14, 16-hour days.
Oh my gosh.
And we have now 3 sons, my wife and I, and I'm just fried. And I'm dealing with anger. I'm dealing with depression. At our 10-year mark, my wife, I finally took her on a real honeymoon, just to get away. Our first honeymoon, I took her canoe camping up to Isle Royale on Lake Superior. Very bad idea for anybody out there who says a canoe camping honeymoon is a good idea.
Oh, goodness. Where the mosquitoes are as big as small birds.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So we had a real honeymoon at 10 years, and I found out later that she had it, and she was actually gonna tell me on that trip that we were done.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was things were hard. Things were really we'd started seeing a counselor, and getting away from the shop for 10 days, she saw the old me that would be fun and enjoyable.
Gave her some hope.
Some hope, yeah. And so we both really just sought some counseling and tried to put our marriage back together, and slowly but surely the what I call the kingdom values, biblical values, started to take root in the business. And I started wrestling with my own inner demons of whether it was alcohol or anger or depression. And she had her issues from her upbringing. So people look at us and they said, how in the world did you survive?
Did you ever make it? Yeah. Well, those 10 years, how did your faith hold you up during that period? Did you go to God and say, Lord, what have you got me into? And how are you going to help me get out of it? Or did you kind of have a separate, church and state, right?
Oh my gosh, no. To me, faith was everything. It was the only thing that held me together. And one of my mentors, passed away, the late Pete Hammond, taught me early on that faith is not just Wednesday and Sunday; it's 24/7.
That's right.
And if I'm called to really be a disciple and to really seek God, it's everything.
Yeah.
And we had such a deep sense.
It's not even daily, it's hourly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even in the midst of all of it and everything that was going on, we felt so strongly called to be here that we're going, Lord, why did you bring us back into this mess? This is horrible.
Show us a sign. Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is often, I think we often think that if we're following God, success is just going to come really quickly. But when I read the life of Jesus in the Bible, and I feel that he calls us to messes, and that's how he kind of fixes things and redeems things. And
that's right.
It's hard to be on the outside looking in, but and think that everything's going to go well. But I think he calls us to sacrifice and obedience and to hang in there and to take the beatings and to try to find grace and the humility in the midst of all of that.
Be as soldiers, and be as Christ-like as we can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So PhD, let's go back to the education. When did that come along, and what was the motivation behind pursuing your education even further?
Well, I had one of my mentors call up, and this was, I think, 2010. So we're going back 11 years. And he said, hey, how about if you get your doctorate? I go, why in the world would I do that? But he knew me well enough that the next phase of my career and in the business, I needed to go deeper. I needed to answer some bigger questions, because the first degree, if you want to call, or the first 10, 15 years was, can my faith be relevant even in this business, in the family, the place that I swore I'd never come back to? Because I I've seen God work. We used to do short-term mission work in different countries in Mexico and inner city LA and different things. And God, I felt God could work in a lot of different environments and religious environments. But can he be relevant in a blue collar machine shop with a quarter barrel and porn everywhere? So, so that was my first big question, and God answered that. Yeah. We're called to be agents of transformation in even the darkest environments, which for me was this machine shop. So after 15 years, it was like, okay, what's the next step? And one of my heart cries, my own background is what I would call being a lost, what I call a shop kid. It's those kids in high school that we were deemed not college material by the school system.
Right.
But
thank God there was wood shop and auto shop and metal shop.
Exactly. Right? And those are everything I excelled in. Right. So one of the biggest issues we had in our business over the years is finding good help. People that want to show up and who have the skills and just have the heart to do it.
Have the passion. To do that stuff.
And we just couldn't find any. I think all the trades in manufacturing they're all struggling to find people like that because the schools have shut down their shop classes and we have few people entering the trades. So I had this mixed dilemma. The business needed to figure out how to continue. And I had these issues in my heart that just passion for young people. And our shop teachers in our school invited me one day to say, hey, could you take a look at our shop class and help resurrect it? And I went over there, and the same machines I ran in 1979, 80, and 81 were
still there.
Mothballed, shoved over in a corner. And while I was there, I'm looking at these kids and I'm going, oh my gosh, that's me, and that's me, and that kid's me.
Yeah.
And I started to put the two together going, hold it. And that's where the doctorate came from. How can I help those kids? And how can I help our business? So out of that, we developed this course called Craftsman with Character and partnered with our local school to basically host the class in our shop. And 5 days a week, we get the kids. 1 day a week, I get them in the classroom. The other 4, they get to job shadow. And they get to be mentored by other, gritty, crusty machinists.
Cool.
And it was a course that we kind of unpacked their worldview. What do you believe and why in terms of what do you think is going to make you happy in life? Money, power, trucks, whatever. And really explore, if you're going to be a success in life, you need the character, you need the integrity, you need the commitment, the discipline, and all of that. For 16 weeks, we get to pound on these kids and really beat it into their head that you're important, the world needs you, you're valuable, even though you're not college material, the world desperately needs who you are.
Sure.
And that course has transformed our business to
a recruiting ground. Yeah.
Oh, it's been amazing. And it's not that we just get kids just for our shop. We're in the community now, and we're getting kids for the auto shop, the body shop.
You're revitalizing it. Yeah. Fantastic.
And so if we get 1 or 2 kids each semester, that's a home run for us out of the 10 or 12. But those of you who are in manufacturing, your listeners, I would ask, what's the average age in your shop? And I think most shops it's between 50, 55.
50 and 60. Yeah. Right.
Well, our average age is down to 29 right now.
Nice. Wow. What a rejuvenation. That's awesome.
And I'm excited because these kids, these young people, they do have passion, and they're humble. They're humble. They want to learn. They're just, I'm rejuvenated to see what a great future we have because we have so many young people.
That's awesome. So how many employees today?
Right about 40.
About 40. So from 17 in the, is this ship going to float or not to 40 today? If you look back at kind of that, 20-year period, right? I mean, are we talking, about 20 years, right? A little longer than that?
Yeah, I'm actually in year 29 right now.
You're 29. Okay. So almost 30 years. What was kind of the biggest cultural shift, that was made, and what was your most successful, tool to make that happen?
And there's so much, we're so radically different, seeing the quarter barrel of beer leave, that was a big deal.
That was a big deal. Yeah.
And I didn't take it out because my dad put it in. I felt it needed to be a symbolic gesture of him taking it out.
And he did.
And he did. He wasn't happy about it. It took about a year. I didn't mandate it. We'd have parties here every afternoon that he would be the ringleader. And so when that went away, and this dog eat dog party mentality I mean, they worked hard, but
and they partied hard.
But now it's a culture that is respectful. There's a lot of dignity, really commitment to excellence. Guys don't. I mean, you rarely hit a swear word, and that's not because I said, "Hey guys, no swearing." It's because they said, "Hold it, we're different now," and we our number one value is humility and respecting each other and appreciating each other. And so if I held up the shop 29 years ago to what it is today, it's not even remotely similar. Except we still, back then my dad was making great gears. Now the technology has changed that we're doing 10 times the work, or actually 10 times the work with just a little over double the employees.
Double the staff. Wow. Fantastic. Great productivity. And who do you, I mean, we talked about the toilet paper supply, but who are your major customers? Who do you sell to? And, who are some of the folks that, have been keeping you going for all these years?
Fortunately, my dad never got into high production, and he stayed away from the auto industry, the ag industry, and those big industries. And he wanted to be diversified as possible. So he was brilliant that way. So he got into the printing industry back then in the 60s and 70s. And you know what happened to the printing industry since then. But that led us into food packaging, anything power transmission with pulleys and sprockets, food, a lot of the food processing industry as well. Our number one account or industry is the paper and cardboard industry. That has just exploded.
Packaging.
Packaging. And you think about Amazon, how everybody's getting things shipped to their door now.
Absolutely.
My goodness, that customer, I think they said they're booked out almost 2 years now with machines that make cardboard boxes.
Wow.
So even through this whole COVID thing, like I've said, we're pretty fortunate because we're very, very diversified.
Yeah, fantastic. So during the 10 years before the final honeymoon and today, tell me a little bit about your leadership style. How has it changed? What was kind of your aha moment, and what were some of the things you started doing differently that really made a difference in terms of productivity, but also kind of the company culture?
That's a great question, because if I look back, being 29 and coming back into the business with these stars in my eyes, this idealistic notion that if I just treat people right, they're just going to fall in line and everything's going to be wonderful.
And it doesn't work, does it?
No, it really doesn't. We don't have time, but I've got story after story of just getting backstabbed and guys trying to start their own business and lying and cheating and stealing. And I'm going, Lord, what is going on? If you just treat people right, don't they treat you right back? And absolutely not. And so I went from, as one of my mentors said, a very confessional leadership style, where I was often apologizing, trying to get the employees' permission, trying to get them to buy in, and realizing, this isn't working. They are eating me alive. And so the shift happened when I realized, one, I have to be a person of vision, and I have to set it before them, and either they go along or they don't. We're not a prison. If they want to join what we're about, I don't demand that they share my faith, but I do demand that we share values. And if they can't buy into what I'm throwing out there as the vision, they're very welcome to leave, and many of them have.
Released to the industry.
And the second major shift that happened for me was realizing that I need to take care of myself. And actually, I wrote about it in my book, that the real aha moment is when one of my employees came in. He said, when you don't lead, we all suffer. And I went, whoa, because I oscillated between, I just want to get in my cave and everybody leave me alone.
Close my door and close my blinds.
Because I get so burned out. I went through these cycles of severe burnout that I would get depressed and angry. I wanted to start drinking again. And it was just such a struggle. And then I get healthy and I go back and I start exercising and then I just get eaten alive again. So that was an aha moment that said, I got to figure out how to break the cycle of burnout and be healthy. And one of the books that I read back when I was doing my master's was Generation to Generation, that by Edwin Friedman, who talks about that the best thing you can do as a leader. And he wrote a second book called A Failure of Nerve, leadership in the age of the quick fix. And in all of his consulting and all of his teaching and so on, he said, the big difference for leaders is when they realize the best thing they could do for their company is to be healthy themselves.
That's right. Very true.
That took me a long time to understand.
Mind and spirit.
Yeah. Yep.
And body.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm sure what happened is then a lot of people left, right? And you did replace folks and brought the kids in, obviously had an opportunity through your doctor's program to bring other folks in. And I would hasten to say that, well, of course, 30 years is 30 years, but my guess is you probably don't have a whole lot of employees that were with you back then.
My right-hand man, my shop manager, is the only one left.
The only one left, yeah.
But we have a lot of employees that I hired in those first, I'd say probably 5 years in, that have been here 25 years. Their loyalty great. Is just fantastic. I've got a lot of 20-year people, 15-year people. We have almost zero turnover. And the people that have left, we brought them up through our system, and then they said, hey, I want to strike out on my own and see if the grass is greener.
Sure.
And we just say, God bless them, and we're still in contact with a lot of them. And so there's not much acrimony between them. It's like, hey, that's great. We helped you on your journey, and feel free to give it a shot.
But it does say a lot about recruiting, and I'm sure today you hire a lot differently than you did back then, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what you look for in people.
Yeah, I've struggled with that because I used to say, well, the mentality was just hire somebody for skills if you could find somebody that can do the job, and that was pretty naive.
Well, but of course, in the industry you're in, you were hard pressed, right? Because there was not a lot of folks coming out with a skill set.
So you take what you can find.
What you can find,
And then you discover how toxic bad character is, and you're going, I would have rather worked 20 hours a day by myself rather than hire this guy.
Yes.
So now we do a pretty in-depth analysis of anybody that's coming in where I don't do the hiring. I let my guys do the hiring.
Right. Sure.
And so they have to work with them. They put them through a really rigorous, multi-interview process.
Good.
Where they really drill down deep. And the thing they're looking for, and it's really interesting, they'll test them on the skills, and they said, yep, we can teach skills. But they're uncanny in smelling a rat, and picking out, does this person have the humility to be a team player?
Yeah.
And if they don't, if they smell just a hint of arrogance, they say, no, we don't want this person.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. They've been developed well. Do you get involved in any of the final interviewing, particularly folks that may be reporting directly to you or that you're working with, on a day in, day out basis, or is that all handled by your team?
I have relinquished almost all of it. Seriously, it's to the point where new staff really they don't meet me until they're already hired. Yeah. Because I really want the staff to own each other.
Right.
And
because most of the hiring, I'm sure it's entry level machine work, right? I mean, they're coming in and
even my office staff. We've hired a few recent office staff. They're office assistants or office managers, and to that level, I want to meet those people, but that I have to work with every day because it's part of the same process. If I'm going to work with you, I want to be part of the process. But if I'm not working with you daily, let that department, those guys, do the hiring.
What do you look for when you have those interviews and making those bets on the people you're going to invest in and hire?
Well, like I said, the top one is humility, and it's a eagerness to learn. It's an eagerness to just to be part of something bigger than themselves. Right. And if we start picking up on values of I'm in it for the money. If they job shop a lot, look at the resume and they're changing jobs every year or so. That's one of the big things. If we see that and we pick up that they've suffered, that's a really big thing.
Sure.
Because they're going to appreciate, I think, our culture.
And the continuity. Yeah.
So there's
how do you get to passion? Passion's something you've talked about. You had it, even though you didn't think you had it, but it's what brought you back. But do you look for that as well? And if so, how do you try to identify that?
Oh boy, that's almost on an intuitive level. I think it's when those conversations start happening, one-on-one, even outside the interview or during the interview, when you start getting to know the person a little bit. What are they interested in? Why? And I think it just starts oozing out. And you can even in the young people that may have had poor social skills, a rough upbringing, you can see it in their eyes if they're all in or not. Or if there's that spark that I want to be all in, but I'm not sure what that is yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think it's, like I said, it's very intuitive. You can pick it up pretty quick.
Now you've got some children as well. You mentioned that earlier. Are they involved in the business?
My oldest son, yes,
Okay.
he came out of college, industrial technology management, and I said
Oh,
you couldn't come back until you worked somewhere else. That was a
yeah.
rule.
Good.
And he had the two worst jobs imaginable, two night jobs. I mean, I've had bad night jobs. When I was in California, I worked in a machine shop for a missile defense contractor, and I thought
Right.
that was bad. His were way up there. Um, the one place, his first night, it was just him and another guy. The guy says, "Well, I'm out of here. Here's the keys. Lock up when you're done." And
Wow.
it was just a disaster. And then he left that and worked for another place, and it was a micromanagement issue
Oh,
where it was just horrible. And so after a year of that, he called me up, and with a lot of trepidation, he said, "Dad, can I come back?"
oh my gosh.
And he appreciates it. He really does. And he's turned out. He's a great machinist. We're starting to introduce him a little bit more in the management process. My other two sons, one's an actual tech ed teacher, wood shop. That's his passion, is working with
Yeah.
wood.
Nice.
And so he's trying to take our craftsman code and craftsman course and put it in his local high school, where he's up in Madison. Our third son is actually working as a HR director in
Oh,
a home improvement store up here.
right.
It's similar to Home Depot, but it's called Menards.
Right.
And his passion, even at 8th grade, we were walking home one night, and I said, and he's a real undeveloped little guy, and I said, "So what do you think you want to do when you grow up?" And he goes, "Dad," and he thought about it for about 10 seconds. He goes, "Dad," and I still remember, he looked up at me and he said, "Dad, I want to do what you do, but I want to see if I can do it somewhere else."
Interesting.
Yeah. And I go,
Wow.
"What do you mean by that?" He
Yeah.
goes, "Well, I've just seen how you've changed the shop and changed the
Huh.
whole culture. And I'm wondering if
Wow.
that can be done in other places too."
How cool is that? Wow. For an eighth grader, that's pretty
Yeah.
insightful.
And he's never
Yeah.
wavered from that. And
That's so
now
cool.
at 24, that's his life passion.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. So will there be a third generation running the shop? Will your son that's involved in the business take it to the next step, or undecided at this stage?
No, he's really committed. But the challenge in our business, because we do a lot of breakdown work, and the work is
Right.
so diverse, it's just really high stress.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've realized that we've got to have a real team approach to how we run the business. So he's
Mm.
watched me. He says numerous times, he goes, "Dad, I don't want to turn out the way you did."
Mm.
meaning
Mm. It's
when
hard to
he was
hear.
growing
Yeah.
up, he just saw me go through these cycles of burnout.
Sure.
And he said, "I want my life to be a bit more balanced and healthy. And how do we do that?" So
Yeah.
we are exploring, actually, this 2021, we are getting very, very serious about taking our whole training and education within the company to a whole nother level,
Cool.
where it will be even a larger team approach, a more
Right.
serious team approach than me just being the one that's kind of making most of the decisions.
Now, do your employees know that you're a man of faith, and is that incorporated into kind of the culture of the company?
Yeah, absolutely. They
Yeah.
definitely know, but I'm not out preaching to them. They just
Right.
know.
Sure.
To me, you go back to St. Francis. I think the quotes is accredited to him, that preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. You know.
I like that.
Yeah,
I
and I
like
think
that.
that's been kind of my mantra for 30 years, because my
Yeah.
dad being such an angry atheist, I couldn't be
Right.
openly verbal about my
Verbal.
faith
Yeah.
unless I
Yeah.
was asked. I had to
It
really be
should.
careful on the shop floor, and rightfully so. I think a lot of blue collar folks are very skeptical and
Yeah.
cynical
Yeah.
about Christians because of some of their
Right.
experiences. So to me,
Sure.
it's been, can I earn their respect? Can I earn their trust by how I live? So the number one quality that I preach all the time around here is goodness. We have to treat others the way we want to be treated. Back to the golden rule, and I really try to take the gospel and apply it in really practical terms. That
Mm.
the thing that Jesus calls us to is a life of goodness, and goodness is this force that, if you'd really take it seriously in every decision you make throughout the day, it is radical, and it
Yeah.
is life changing. It's a company changer. Um, and I think that's what guys have bought into around here more than anything. We are a
Yeah.
company that takes goodness very, very seriously.
Well, listen, we're almost out of time, but I do have a couple of last questions we ask all our guests. And, we kind of end where we started. And this is, our pandemic world. We're all hoping that 2021 is going to be a different one. Vaccinations going out. You mentioned Wisconsin. The numbers are falling. My home state of California just announced today that they're going out of lockdown, letting people run around a little bit.
Wow,
so
excellent.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, we'll see how things go. But, what changes do you see ahead? Do you think that this is going to transform your business? And, what broader type of opportunities and as well as challenges do you think we'll have in society moving forward in hopefully a post-COVID world we'll see soon?
I look at, well, for one, I don't watch the news a lot anymore, just for my own mental health. Right?
You're a smart man in that regard.
but our culture, I think, has gone through so much in the last 18 months, so much upheaval. And I look at it as opportunity. And I'm actually very excited and very hopeful, maybe contrary to popular opinion. But I see tremendous opportunity in the sense that for the first time in my life that I can remember, people are asking the right questions. And people are asking really what's essential. And we've taken manufacturing and so many of these different careers and industries for granted that people are now saying, whoa, what really is essential? And maybe I don't need to get a 4-year degree. Maybe I need to get a technical education. Maybe there's other opportunities. And it's the level of anxiety has caused people to really step back and really ask what's important. So I've had great conversations not only with our employees but with our customers, and I think those companies who again take goodness, treating each other fairly, and having integrity, I think those values are standing out more than ever that I can remember in my career. And so for us, we are struggling to keep up and being very choosy about what customers will take on, because for us, it's such a deep commitment of a relationship. We have to culturally fit each other. I think the challenge for us is how do we manage the growth and manage the opportunities. But with the young people that we got, I'm just really, really excited about. Yeah, it's got to be better in 2020, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, last question. I'm going to put a little bit of a spin on it because you are in a family business. You tried to leave it.
Yeah,
you did for the better part of a decade, and now you're back and you've got potentially the third generation coming. What life advice or career advice would you give to someone that perhaps is in a family business and, kind of has their, kind of trajectory towards, that ownership role? Maybe they're, now working under their father or their mother and, maybe having thoughts about, gosh, is that what they want to do? Maybe some of the same things that your son is going through now. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's in that kind of role and thinking about the future?
It goes back to what I said when the aha moment for me was I need to be healthy. And every family, I don't care who, every family has issues and dark closets and dynamics that we often don't understand until we get older and things start unfolding. So what I would suggest, like for instance, here in Madison, up in Wisconsin here, there's a family business center where they unpack all those family dynamics. And I think a lot of cities have them now, or there's resources online. But I would really encourage anybody to dig into understanding your family history, your family dynamics, why or how you got to where you are now. Identify, some of those things that might be uncomfortable. And the sooner you can figure out who you are and what it means to be healthy for you and for your family, it's way better to do that than to surprise you by some crisis or it sneaks up on you. And I think that's where I had phenomenal mentors who helped me understand that you'd never get away from your family dynamics, but you can grow and learn from them and help not only your generation, but the next generation and generation after that to be healthier and really think about legacy. But it starts with you, with me being healthier now.
Yeah. Wise words. Dave Hataj, second generation president and owner of Edgerton Gear. Thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
My pleasure. Thanks, Brand. I really have enjoyed this.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brandt, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.